Conflicts and arguments between parents and partners are a normal part of everyday life and can usually be resolved quickly and calmly. But sometimes, we can find that our arguments become more heated, more frequent, and certainly more damaging. Damaging to the individuals, to their families, and especially to their children. If you're a parent having trouble with your relationship, whether you're a couple living together with your children, or you are separated or divorced, then this video workshop is for you. With easy-to-follow guides, tips and tutorials, it will help parents and co-parents manage their conflicts by learning how to understand and develop your relationship skills, learn how to manage difficult situations, learn how to communicate better, understand how conflict between parents and partners impacts on children and young people. You'll also learn to identify and develop skills that can help build strong and caring family relationships, including taking time to listen to each other. You don't blame each other. Communicating with each other. Working together to resolve problems. Offering support and understanding for each other. Relationships come in different shapes, sizes and numbers, such as couple parents, co-parents, blended families, same-sex relationships. It doesn't matter how our relationships are made up. Conflict can affect any of us at any time and often can become an everyday occurrence for us, so much so that it seems normal in the relationship. There are lots of signs that you may have conflict in your relationship. You keep arguing. You're blaming each other. You try and talk things through, but arguments reoccur. You struggle to listen to each other. You do not accept each other's points of view. You're not feeling loved or emotionally available for each other. You're struggling to communicate with each other. Sometimes it may seem hard to identify the cause of your conflicts, but when you do start to understand why your conflicts happen, this can help you begin to talk about the issues, to explain to others how they make you feel, and identify and begin to discuss your triggers with each other, all aimed to working together to find a way forwards. Here are some of the common causes of conflicts in relationships. Whatever the causes of your conflict are, it's important to listen to each other, as you could both have different views on what causes your conflict. Sometimes when parents are experiencing conflict, children become involved, sometimes indirectly by just being able to hear or see a conflict. Sometimes it's more direct, when a parent may ask a child to share messages with the other parent to avoid direct contact. Or they may ask a child to pick a side in an argument or inform them on what the parent gets up to when they're with them. Whatever the degree of exposure or involvement a child may have in a relationship with conflict, research has shown that being exposed to conflict can have negative impacts on a child's life, resulting in poor mental health and physical well-being, taking risks with their own health, emotional and behavioural problems, poor academic performance, sleep problems, social and interpersonal relationship problems, low employability in later life. As we go through this workshop, it's important that we think about the roles our children might play when we're experiencing conflict as parents. So, let's get started. We do what we do and think what we think largely because of our past experiences. These are the things you bring with you to any relationship, and they are what make you who you are as a person. They are the things that will go into your life bag that you'll carry with you through life. These can be things such as your culture and/or the community you've lived in, your personality, your genetic makeup, your family, past relationships, the way you've been parented, the environment you've grown up in. all go into your life bag and shape your makeup as a person. It's important that you talk about the stuff that you bring with you in your bag of life with your partner, as this helps you have a better understanding of each other. And when we understand each other better, it makes conflict resolution all the more achievable by enabling us to identify what is really important to you and your partner, be open and honest with each other, be respectful to each other, use good and effective communication, understand your values so that you can recognize areas of your life that need more attention and what to prioritize in the future, and set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are important because they set the basic guidelines of how you want to be treated and how you want other people to behave around you. Setting boundaries can ensure that relationships can be mutually respectful, appropriate, and caring. Take some time out to think about your relationship and identify what boundaries you have in place, and equally, what boundaries would you like to have in place? We can start to communicate more effectively when we understand what is important to you and your partner, that we need to be open and honest, that we always need to be respectful to each other, and we need to understand that boundaries change due to age, personal circumstances, etc. So it's fine to revisit boundaries within a relationship to make sure they're still relevant to us. It may surprise you to know that we all have our own styles when it comes to arguing, and as we're seeing throughout this workshop, the more we understand how we behave in an argument, the more we can work to address our negative behaviours. There are 3 key arguing styles that have been identified: walkers, sulkers, and pushers. A walker is someone who often walks away from conflict. They'll choose to avoid it and take themselves out of the conversation. A sulker is someone who will sulk, become silent and ignore the other person. They have the ability to sulk for long periods of time, and this becomes uncomfortable, so the other person gives in. A pusher is someone who wants to have the discussion. They want to talk it all through and find a resolve in the here and now. So what's your arguing style, and how does your style affect your partner and how the argument goes? By understanding each other's arguing style and how this impacts on one another can really help you agree on some boundaries, understand each other better, and help to prevent arguments from getting worse or keep happening. Talk about how your partner's style makes you feel. As parents, we can sometimes feel that we're always busy and that no one understands what we do with our day, and that lack of understanding between parents can trigger arguments. This is especially true when it comes to not understanding each other's daily pressures, which can include many things that could act as trigger points for conflict. Set aside time to explore together what your days look like and identify any triggering times you spot, whilst exploring with them what their day looks like. As with the previous workthroughs, be sure to hear each other out. Even if you view their day differently, remember that it's their day. Try not to use blaming language. Once you have a better understanding of each other's days and possible triggers, show each other some more understanding and help prevent arguments from keeping occurring. The more we learn to understand our partners, the more we will learn about ourselves. Often, arguments can start from seemingly trivial or insignificant incidents that quickly trigger us into an argumentative, conflict state. If we look back at a recent argument, when we're calm, we can often see that what we thought was the cause of the conflict was actually something else, or indeed something trivial. But we reacted in a certain way because of the physical or mental state we were in, or based on how we have reacted historically. Look back at the last time you had conflict or an argument, and if you reacted harshly. Think about your own signs. What were your behaviour responses to anger? Also, what are your early warning signs, your partner's early warning signs, or your children's early signs that might precede an argument? The more you understand how and why you react in certain ways, the more you can try to manage irritation and anger before it has an opportunity to take over. Managing anger is about recognizing your personal warning signs and your partner's and how they make you feel. Usually, when we're engaged in an argument or experiencing conflict, our physical sensations and our emotional state will change. Think about what physical sensations you get when you feel a particular emotion or when you feel you are approaching a potential conflict. Again, the more we understand the early warning signals around potential conflict, the more we can begin to change our behaviours to avoid conflict from occurring. As we're all too well aware, when we're arguing, fighting and experiencing conflict, our bodies usually experience the fight or flight stress response the same. Our blood pressure rises, the heart pumps faster, and muscles constrict, essentially preparing us to run away from the source of conflict or to stand and fight it. Externally, however, people respond to stress in different ways. We've already identified that when we're stressed, we're less able to deal with conflicts and arguments in a calm and rational way. So it's important that we learn tools to relieve stress. The fastest way to relieve stress is by engaging one or more of your senses: sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, or movement. Since everyone responds differently, to practice quick stress relief, you need to discover the sensory input that works for you. Have a practice with these 5 suggestions. Just stop whatever you're doing and take 3 to 5 mindful breaths. A mindful breath is a slow, deep breath during which you focus your mind on your breathing. This is an extremely simple technique and is particularly effective when you're feeling upset or stressed. Mindful walking is a form of mindfulness meditation that you can do without having to make specific time for it in the course of your day. Most of us do a lot of walking. Instead of allowing ourselves to get lost in thoughts of the past or the future, if we pay attention to our walking, we're calming our minds. Try to start looking into your partner's eyes and listening mindfully to what he, she, or they are saying. Don't allow yourself to be distracted by whatever else is going on in the room. Things you need to do, or things that have happened before. This technique is likely to have a big impact on your relationships with your children, partner, or work colleagues. Speaking more mindfully takes a little time and practice to develop. Often, we simply react to what someone else has said. Someone says something, and something else pops into our mind right away. We don't necessarily think about the consequences of our response. So, the first step is to take a few seconds break before we speak. By pausing a little, we can think a little more about how we can respond in a way that the other person understands better. Also, the tone of voice, gestures, and mannerisms that accompany our statements can make a big difference to show how that statement is heard and understood. So once again, slow down. If you're calm and speak a little more slowly, we subconsciously infuse more peaceful content into the conversation. That really helps keep the stress levels down. The next step in mindful speech is to tune in to how your speech and your presence in general is being received. That skill can take a while to develop. Simply write out the words of a meditation or affirmation by hand for 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's all you have to do. The words imprint themselves on your subconscious, so that literally after a few days, you'll find yourself behaving differently without any conscious effort. What it does is change our attitude and our feelings about people in general. If we see the world in terms of people who are out to get us, and we need to get them before they get us, this will change our attitude. As we start to develop our understanding of why we experience conflict within our relationships, what can trigger conflict, and why we respond the way we do, the more we're able to intervene in our own conflict responses and develop tools and techniques to prevent conflict from happening or to resolve them quickly, calmly, and to the benefit of everyone involved. A simple tool you can use is to think about times in which you find yourself in arguments. It's the always, sometimes, never technique. Using this tool will help you understand what you always do, what you sometimes do, and what you never do in an argument or conflict situation. Take time to do this yourselves, but your answers may be, we always shout at each other. We sometimes try to see the other person's point of view. We never think that we're wrong. Take time to reflect on what you then could do next time an argument is happening to try and break the cycle and patterns of your arguments. Be sure to listen to each other's ideas. Remember, you won't always see things the same. Neither one of you is wrong. A great exercise to illustrate this is to find an image online or in a magazine. It can be any image, and then look at the image together. Make a note of 5 things you see. After a few minutes, ask each other what it was you were able to see. You may find that you are both looking at the same picture, but seeing things differently. Parents often view the same situation from very different perspectives. Neither is right or wrong. Both need to be acknowledged and considered. When in the heat of an argument, it is very easy to forget that how we communicate and the words we use will likely have a direct impact on how the exchange will develop. If we use aggressive, sharp tones and language that seems to attack the other person's actions, we're adding fuel to the fire, and this will likely escalate the argument. A great technique to create a calmer, more measured conversation is to use the you and I statement technique. When sharing a concern with your partner or co-parent, instead of saying, "You never tell me when you're going to be late," which will often cause the other parent to become defensive, begin your sentence with I. For example, "I feel hurt when you don't tell me you'll be late." With this sentence, we show that we're taking responsibility for our own emotions, rather than blaming. As well as using different approaches to the language you use in your communications, if you find that a situation is becoming argumentative, insulting, or aggressive, it's a good idea to take a time out and reset, rather than escalate the situation. As you'll have learned from earlier in this video, trying to push through when emotions are high will rarely achieve a calm and positive resolution to a situation. With this in mind, have a plan in place so both of you can take a break when needed. Agree to spend some time doing something alone that you find relaxing. Then, when you've both calmed down, you can return to solving the problem. Always make sure that you do return to the discussion though. It isn't a good idea to leave these issues unaddressed, and you should always look to work together to find a solution or a resolution to the source of conflict. Disagreement is a normal part of a relationship. If it becomes clear that you cannot agree, focus on a resolution instead. Try to find a compromise that benefits both individuals. Ask yourself if this disagreement really matters, and let yourself move on if not. It isn't always easy to talk about how we feel. However, it is important that we try. Being able to label your feelings, what you'd like to happen, and how your partner can help meet your needs can be an easy way to move forwards. Sometimes we become stuck. We expect our partners to understand our feelings and our needs, when these are often left unsaid. At times, your partner may say, "Just tell me what to do." This is a clear sign that they're not sure of your expectations, and therefore, they need you to communicate what you're feeling and what you need. At the start of this workshop, we identified that conflict resolution and dealing with arguments can affect any relationships and family groups. But if you find yourself in a co-parenting situation following a breakup, and you are struggling to deal with continued conflict and arguments due to rising resentment, it's important that you always try to overcome any built-up resentment and focus on creating a more positive future rather than dwelling on the past. Where possible, find a way to make shared decisions about parenting. Always try to interact with each other as much as possible and make sure this is positive. Try and set aside any feelings of hurt or anger. Being a mature and responsible co-parent is to always put your children's needs ahead of your own. Consider if your children are being placed in the middle of your arguments. Remember, no matter how insignificant you may feel your actions are, they can be damaging to any children involved in a conflict situation. Communication is essential for co-parenting. Always provide the other parent with information that you expect that parent to give you. When information isn't exchanged, children could then end up in the middle of the conflict. Sharing information with a co-parent is always best practice. If you're unable to communicate, look for friends and family that could help with this, so communication can continue. And always remember, keep your focus. What is it you're looking for out of the conversation? Keep it cool. Breathe. Think about your children. Try to use I statements, labeling your feelings, rather than using blaming language. Use an appropriate method: email, text message, telephone calls. Be respectful. No name calling, no nicknames, no abusive language. Don't ask the children to share messages between you both. Remember that your children love you both, and that's okay. Remember, the journey to be able to resolve your conflicts and communications effectively will take time, but every time you're able to stop, become aware of your emotions, and to be able to see arguments from someone else's point of view, you are taking a step in the right direction, and that is something that will be beneficial to you, your partner or co-parent, and your family members. Give yourself time to check in with this video on a regular basis, and you can also use it as a tool to drop into when you feel you need it. And remember the key points that will help you effectively learn to resolve your conflict, de-escalate rows, and communicate more effectively.